Today we're going to talk about the evidence we have for evolution. Our goal is to be able to talk about the different lines of evidence for evolution, so how we know that organisms change over time. Title for your notebook today can be Evidence for Evolution. First piece of evidence we have is embryos. Embryos are tiny little organisms before they're born. Okay, and the embryos of closely related species look similar. I'm going to show you pictures in a second. So this website shows us pictures of embryos. So we're going to start with this guy. Do you think it's the goldfish, the dog, the bear, or the mouse? Let's click and find out. This is actually a mouse embryo. So if we watch, here's the mouse embryo developing. Let's look at another one. Embryo 2. Which one do you think this is? The ferret, the sheep, the quail, or the kangaroo? Let's find out. It's the quail. So the bottom line here is that embryos in the beginning, it's really hard to tell what organism they are because they all look very similar. So in this picture, we can see that a shark, a lizard, a chicken, a pig, a human all start out looking very similar and then over time become different. And this provides evidence that we all kind of came from a common ancestor a long time ago that probably developed this way. Shows us that our ancestors are probably connected because we develop in similar manners. Second piece of evidence, we have our fossils. So fossils can show us that organisms from a long time ago were different from our present day organism, and they can show us similarities between organisms that exist today and organisms that existed in the past. So this is a horse skeleton. These are some of the different other fossils that they've found, and they believe that these fossils are showing how horses evolved over time to become the horses we know today. We can also talk about vestigial structures, or examining structures or body parts that are useless or no longer serve a purpose for an organism. One example is the appendix in humans. So originally, the appendix in some animals is used to help digest plant matter. In humans, it doesn't really serve that much of a purpose. Scientists are kind of figuring out some small little pieces that might serve a purpose now, but it doesn't have a really big job. And that's why if you have appendicitis, you can get it taken out. Doesn't do anything. And our tailbone. Why do we have a tailbone? We don't have a tail. Well, the idea is that a long time ago, one of our common ancestors had a tail, and this is left over from those ancestors. Another example here, you'll see that cave fish, so fish that live in caves, don't really have an eye. They might have an eye socket or remnants of what might be an eye, but they don't have an eye, whereas regular fish do. Well, why? Well, the cave fish no longer needed an eye. It wasn't necessary for them to see because it was dark all the time. And so they end up not necessarily needing that eyeball. It's a leftover structure, and they might have heightened other senses as a result because they are not seeing things. Homologous structures, structures that are similar because they come from a common ancestor. Prefix HOMO means same, so same structures. One example is the wing of a bat, the arm of a human, the flipper of a whale, okay, the leg of a cat. You'll see that these bones are kind of color coordinated. See how they have orange, a long orange one. This is the same bone in each individual, and it's next to this white bone. So we have that same pattern. And then we have a bunch of tiny little yellow bones. And then we have the fingers, or the digits, those are the brown bones. And so while the digits and some of the bones have been adapted for the jobs that these animals do, they still have this same pattern of bones. And last but not least, we have DNA. Organisms that are closely related will share similar DNA or similar amino acid sequences. If we take a look at our table here, this is comparing it to humans. So we've got number of amino acid differences from humans. You see in this one gene they're looking at, chimpanzees don't have any amino acid differences from humans. Now, this is one gene, this is not all of their genes. So they're closely related, which makes sense. We think of chimps as being closely related to humans. On the other end of the spectrum, we have yeast, which is a fungus, 42 differences in this gene. So we can see that the more differences they have in their DNA, the less likely they are to be closely related.